Welcome everyone to this Force Friday. Today we're talking about a very, very exciting subject, one I really love, and that is character design, right? It seems to be the job that like almost every darn artist wants. I have to say, when I go to art schools to teach, the two main ones that everybody wants to go after are concept and character design. To me, character design is almost like saying, I want to be an actor. You know, I want to go out and be an actor in movies, right? And you have this desire in you as the artist to be the actor, right? Because unless you're going into animation, which is also the acting in 3D, you know, nowadays not so much 2D as much as 3. But I would say the other person, that loves that space is the character designer. So let's say hello to Swenley really quick. How's it going, Mr. Swenley?
Yeah, good, excited. Of course, this is one of my favorite subjects, so I look forward
Yes,
to
of course. Yeah, it's close to home. Swenley, for some of you may not know this, Swenley is, besides teaching, obviously, at drawingforest.com, is a professional character designer who came from industrial design. So that's kind of an interesting journey all on its own, right? To go from industrial to character. Still design on either one of those job titles, though, which to me is the controller sort of creative aspect of the job, that you're making something to a purpose, right? And that's going to actually be one of our big conversations today. So that's a good segue. So let's get to Photoshop. We have a lot to cover. Mrityunjay will not be with us today, so Swenley and I will be holding down the fort. And like I said, we have a lot to talk about. I'm sure you guys are just as excited as we are. Like I said, character design is a huge subject. There are a lot of stars in this space, you know. Like I said, it's like the actors. Somehow the character designers are the ones who are famous, probably even more than the art directors. In most films, for some reason, we all seem to know who the character designers are, right? So I want to start with this thumbnail. This thumbnail is something that Swenley and I have been working on for a little while in the background as we're going to build up the course for character design on drawingforest.com. So that is coming probably next year. And I kind of showed Swenley, hey, this is something I used to do in video games as an art director. Is I would create these charts, these XY charts, and they would help me art direct a project. And I was like, let's do that for character design and get a sense of like who's out there and what things look like. And this chart, you'll notice in the bottom left, goes from abstract. If you go vertically, it goes through abstract to line to color to sculpture. So it goes across the different vehicles of art in an abstract sense. And then on the far right, from abstract, we go to reality. So, you know, you can see, and some of these artists we'll be looking at today, like Brittany Lee over here, right? You'll have abstract, and this one has shape and color, and you go all the way to the top right, and you'll have, you know, the Renaissance. You'll have Bernini. One of my favorite sculptors is Richard McDonald. I have to say, I think he's like sort of modern Renaissance, like his skill level. So we have three-dimensional sculpture all the way down to like 2D graphic line drawing. And we went through color and we went through three-dimensionality, right? And again, simple on the left, abstract, to more real on the right. You can see Frazetta is over here as well, right? You got Adam Hughes over here. So I'm sure you've seen a lot of these different artists. And by the way, I'm going to preface today again with Force Friday is 1 hour, not 7. This could easily have been a 7-hour talk. We are barely scratching the surface on character design and all of the amazing artists that are in this field. Some artists I've even talked about already in prior sessions. I might have talked about somebody in illustration or comics because they might be more well-known in that area, but they're also amazing character designers, right? So hopefully, you know, I want to be aware here. I'm not trying to isolate anyone. There's a lot of great people out here. It's just a matter of us picking and choosing somebody to talk about that works with the subjects that we're discussing today. Okay, so with all that in mind, before I leave this chart, I think this is a great exercise for all of you. If you're trying to figure out where you want to land, go out there and create your own abstract to reality chart. You can stick with just line or color or grayscale or whatever. You can go you can go with line. You can make an axis of this, straight line to curved lines, see who's out there in the space and really try to figure out where you want your work to go, right? All right, and as usual, if you have any questions, just type them into the chat, right? Okay, so let's get to it. I'm going to jump over here, and I'm going to start with a really big one, big character designer, and that is Jin Kim. So Jin Kim has been at Disney now for many years as a character designer. Amazing skill. He's helped design a lot of the main characters we've seen probably in the last, I would say, 15 to 20 years at Disney Animation. And what I want to start with, our main first subject, is I want you to be aware of, like, what is the main function actually of character, right? It's like, why is this character here? Characters are there to propel a story forward. Typically, just to put on my writer's hat for a moment, typically a character is based on becoming the entity for what the theme of a film is, right? Like Superman represents, goodness and righteousness, right? And kindness, right? So you can take that and say, well, I'm going to take that theme, those ideas, those thematic ideas, and I'm going to come up with this character, and he's going to be called Superman. And he comes from another planet, so he's this alien, so he's always separate from us. Like, what does that mean? But here's the things that he represents on Earth. I can't take that theme and shove it into Batman. That's not Batman. That's not Batman's theme, right? So good filmmaking and good characters will represent sort of morals and themes of a story. And man, think about that. That's a challenge now. If I were to say to you, hey, I wrote this story and I want you to be the character designer, I'm going to look for a character designer that can design somebody who's going to look like they should represent the theme of my film, right? Wow, that's pretty deep, right? Pretty challenging if you think about it. And that's what a good casting director will do, right? A good casting director for a film will find actors whose face and nature already starts to feel like that person, right? And bad casting, man, that will destroy a movie, right? Because you're just like, I just don't believe in this. I don't believe that this person is angry or kind or greedy or whatever it is, right? They just don't represent like the concept of the film. I just don't buy into it, you see? So imagine now you're doing that from drawing. So there's probably a lot of research done. You're basically a casting director. And I steal this idea, by the way, from Teddy Newton. And if you don't know who Teddy is, Teddy was, his like claim to fame, especially in character design, was he had worked on Iron Giant, but probably even better known for his work on The Incredibles, right? So he worked with Brad Bird on The Incredibles, the character designer, while he was at Pixar. And he's the one who, if you have the books, The Art of Books, he's the one who actually started pushing this idea of collage into character design. So he was like clipping out magazine photographs and putting them together, because that really added some reality and texture and more character to the character designs. If you have my character design book, there's 2 or 3 pieces originals that Teddy actually did specifically for that book, which are amazing. And he brought to me, when we were working on the character design book, I said, how do you figure out character? And he said, he's like, I really just try to make believe I'm a casting director. And he's like, when I'm in a job, he's like, I'm out there, I'm looking, he's like, I might be at the coffee shop and go, that guy looks like who this character is supposed to be. That's casting, right? And that leads into character design. So keep that in mind. If you're trying to create a character for your own comic book, your own film, storyboard, animation, whatever it may be, you want to try to become aware of, when you're out there walking around the malls, restaurants, family members go, and that guy would be really great at blank. This is just the kind of character that they instill, right? So that's the function, right? The main function is the character has to embody the morals and the theme of that story. What is that visually supposed to look like? So challenging, I think, super challenging. So Jin Kim is an excellent draftsman and great at creating these visuals, these characters that look like what they're supposed to look like, right? This is all from Big Hero 6, right? these characters, notice they look very different from one another. They're dressed differently than one another. Their hairstyles are different from one another. The way they perform, their mannerisms, the way they stand and sit and move and talk defines their character, which is their morals, right? So, Hiro, he has a certain look about him. And notice his brother is very well put together and he's like falling apart, right? His hair is all sloppy and all over the place. His brother's like well defined. Very different characters, right? And like, what do they mean, in the story? Look at this guy. I forget his name, but he's kind of like the, what's the word I'm looking for? He's like the hippie, right, of the group from what I recall. And, he's got the hat, the long hair, the loose clothing, right? I'm not even sure if this might be Shyun Kim, actually. I'd have to double check on this, but this might be Shyun, just looking even at the line and the way this is drawn. But very, very different, right? Very, very different characters, visuals representing very different personality types, right? So being aware of all of that. Here's some older stuff of Jin's as well. So all the way from like Rapunzel. God, I just blanked on the name of this film. What's the name of this film again? What's the animals? Zootopia. Thank you, Zootopia. From Zootopia drawings, right? By the way, students at drawingforce.com, we lean on Jin Kim's work quite a bit. When I have students go through all the basics of figure drawing, we start working on anatomy and we start with the head. I usually have students do a ton of Jin Kim studies because he's so excellent at not only the facial expressions, but how force, form, and shape come together on something like the human head, right? So an expression, by the way, is key, right? Expression and body posture. To me, this is all, it's like experimenting or test driving the character design. Is this really going to work, right? Now, in film, you'll find typically the casting director is already helping with the job of what these characters will look like to some degree based on who they're casting. There'll be some note, right? Some concept of how this guy is going to show up here, right? The actor is going to show up in the design, right? Sometimes it's very close and it's very obvious, and sometimes it's not, right? Depends. But usually I find that more often than not it is, which means a lot of that visual work is done here and they kind of redress them up. And notice, Disney does do this. The character designers, the actors, they look at video footage of the voice actors performing, right? Because it's all there, right? The information is coming off of reference again. So being aware of that too. And how do you take that reference and manipulate it to work within the drawing and the character design, right? Very challenging. Anyways, I was saying, we use Jin Kim's work a lot because he's amazing, right? Like, look at these head drawings, super solid, clear form, clear shape, great facial expressions, right? They stay on model, right? Which is a whole other subject in itself, right? Just really, really well drawn, really, really well drawn. Okay, like I said, I'm going to show you part of today. My goal today is to show you lots of different character designers. So you'll leave here at least with a list of names to look at too. This is Carter Goodrich. Carter kind of became big in this time period with Pixar. I don't think he was a full-timer. If I'm correct, I think he's sort of like a contracted character design artist. Lots of great story, right? Talking about story, like look at the acting, right? And through the acting, we're also starting to form shapes, right? Shapes are coming out of performance, which is amazing. Look at how he's flowing from right to left. This is basically two force shapes, by the way, just to simplify this down, right? If I were to draw this, I would say, well, he's like this. Here's the curve, this is the straight, and then it flips from curve to straight, you see? So Carter does this, which is interesting. He kind of does it with a very sketchy line, like he puts a lot of thought and just trying to like figure this stuff out. It's got a little tone and texture to it, a lot of texture in the drawing. But ironically, he does it with a lot of forceful shape, right? The shape he gets to is still fluid, right? So kind of interesting. His method to getting there is very different than mine, but he's getting to this similar end result, right? see he's worked on a lot of films as we start going through these for different studios. Again, a lot of texture in the line for tone and clothing, right? Great shapes. He's got form. It's kind of funny. They're two-dimensional and three-dimensional at the same time. And this feels kind of flat to me, but he's created a little bit of form inside of that flatness, right? It's this weird space that he occupies. There's stuff for Brave, right? Merida. Again, notice story. Look at how she's standing, right? So he's having her act how she shoots a bow and arrow, how she stands with the sword, right? The specificity of how the character is going to do their specific thing is very, very important. When I used to live in LA and I was pitching a lot of cartoon ideas, a couple of things would always come up to me that people would mention. They'd say, hey, you know, you want to make sure your character is interesting as well. Not only do we have this theme thing going on, but they're so unique that, for instance, if you stuck them in a box, how would they get out, right? And SpongeBob would get out of a box differently than James Bond would get out of a box, right? And that's uniqueness, right? You want characters that we as the audience are interested in watching, right? If we're not interested in watching, it doesn't matter what their theme is, then game over, right? We're not going to watch. So you want to be aware of that as well. So here's more Carter Goodrich. All right, again, a lot of texture, a lot of personality, a lot of acting. Here's something we're going to talk about in the background today. But what's cool about this is iteration, right? So notice that Carter is iterating designs. You know, here we have this clownfish, but look at the different iterations of the fish, right? They're all slightly different shapes and sizes, different personalities. Look here, they're all clownfish, but look at the teacher versus the school and the students, right? They all have a slightly different face. It's like a bunch of little kids following a very disgruntled teacher around, right? How do I know he's disgruntled? Look at his face, right? So being able to iterate is where like all the shaping stuff comes in, the artisticness of shape being presented through personality types comes out here, you know. And as an artist, you got to be aware enough of your world to know how to see that, you know, not look at people as you walk down the street and go, oh, everybody looks the same. Your job is the exact opposite. You want to be like, damn, look at how different everybody looks, right? The uniqueness of every individual. And what kind of feeling do you get from that person, right? What does it make you think about? Do they feel or look villainous to you or heroic to you, right? Like, how do they come across? So this is Peter DeSev. I've met actually Peter a couple times when I used to go to Comic-Con. He was, I don't know now if he is as much, but in the past, in the 90s, Disney started picking him up. And if you look at I remember for Hunchback specifically, the Art of Hunchback book, he has a lot of illustrations in that book. They started picking him up as a like contracted character designer, which made total sense, right? Because look, the drawings are solid, they're shaped, and tons of personality, right? Lots of character, right? Lots of character in these designs, right? So let's just kind of take a look through these. Peter has an excellent book out you can get. It's I think it's a $40 or $50 book. It's like 2 inches thick, just filled with his illustrations and sketches and drawings. I don't even think they're color. I think they're all pencil drawings, so pretty amazing. But think about the amount of work in here, okay? Really look through this. Imagine you drawing this. Look at the dog's face. Look at the giraffe's face. Look at this couple and how they're looking at each other. Look at this guy looking at the bird. Look at this woman trying the food. Look at the guy talking to her trying the food. Look at this guy looking up. Look at the pig looking at the bear, right? Like there's story through personality in every individual, and their clothing is different, right? They're dressed in a certain way. So rich, right? So darn rich with information. I love this one on the right, right? It's like some picture I've always had in my head. Maybe I saw this years ago, I don't remember, but the idea of having Kermit the Frog next to Yoda cracks me up. Look at this woman who's got this pet as an alligator, and it says no gators allowed, I guess, inside maybe the park. I'm not sure, but look at, the gator's scared, right? And the little lady's like, everything's going to be okay, right? Story, right? And the gag of the gator is the scared one, right? When it's this really big, tough gator. I mean, it could eat anything it wants here in this park, right? And beautifully drawn, beautifully painted, beautifully illustrated. All that aside, look at story, right? Look at story, look at characters. When you go draw on location, right? When I tried to get into Disney, one of the things I learned from my portfolio is they wanted on location drawing. And I don't remember how I figured this out or somebody told me, but I realized, the goal of this is not only like perspective and composition, but it's story. You're looking for story moments when you're on location. Like I had a mother that was helping her child bowl, going at bowling lanes. And the mom was like arched over the little kid, like helping him roll a bowling ball. Like that was one of the drawings in my portfolio, right? I was looking for very unique moments that I could sketch, right? So they'd be like, oh, that's really cool. That's really cool. Look at these story moments. And then getting the personality of the people in those moments, right? Like that's where you really want this all to go. So this is Peter. Peter, like I said, in my world, Peter was huge in the early to mid 90s. He was a very, very famous illustrator in that time period, and then got picked up by Disney and was doing this kind of great work, which when I was in school, everybody was looking at him. It's like, damn, look at this stuff. So good, so much form and solidity, great characters. And ironically, and I don't know what the story is behind here, quite frankly, so I'm not even going to bother coming up with one. Brian Ajar was out at the same time. And these guys, you can tell stylistically very similar. I would say Brian's a little softer than Peter is, but both of them were in kind of the similar space of this drawing and watercolor look, very rich character. Unfortunately, they both had excellent careers. And Brian, I just bumped into for the first time ever just a couple of years ago at CTN. Very nice guy. Again, beautiful work. Again, huge during the 90s. I think he's still out there illustrating as well. But same thing, look at the stories, look at the illustrations, look at the characters, right? Just rich worlds, right? And I have to say, from my own personal experience, it's easy to look at this stuff and go, oh, that's probably not that hard to do. But when you sit down and you put pencil to paper and you're like, what am I going to draw? Right? The challenge is is coming up with those stories, and not only coming up with those stories, but you being enough of a sponge to the world around you to have the ability to see these different personalities in people and come up with the poses that are going to match what they're supposed to be doing in these stories, right? When I look at this kind of work, I have to say I very, very highly respect it. It's like storyboarding, storytelling, comics, all in one frame typically, right, to tell story here. So Brian Ajar, right? Last but not least, in this sort of acting segment we're talking about here, I want to talk about Genevieve Tsai. Genevieve, on a personal note, Genevieve and I actually worked together. So she was an artist that worked for me when I was at Zynga as an art director, and Genevieve was one of the concept artists there. So I got to meet her by working there, and she was amazing, and she was right in my camp because she even has a book that she self-published on like the love of line or something like that. It's called. She's a line artist, which, as you guys know, I love. So we really hit it off pretty well, and you can see she's a just amazing drawer, right? Excellent drawer. And then after Zynga, I think she was like kind of floating around on other projects for a little bit. I think she was on something with Chris Sanders, the guy from Lilo and Stitch. And I'm very, 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 very happy to say that now she's got the supervisor character design position over at Animaniacs at Warner Brothers. So damn happy that she landed there. Like she's like the perfect person for that job, as you're going to see. So look at this again, iterating with acting, right? Look at the different expressions, right? And staying on model, it's hard enough to know how to draw. It's another whole thing to know how to draw and stay on model and then have somebody go through expression, right? But look at these pages, so awesome, right? Great shapes, great designs, look at all the acting, look at the silhouettes of the birds, just beautiful, beautiful work. Here's some of her more recent stuff for Animaniacs, right? If you check out Genevieve's Instagram, she's got a ton of this stuff that she's been putting up from Animaniacs, which so many people are happy to see return as a cartoon. It's just such a beloved show, right? And here's last but not least, oh, actually I have one more. So here's this dragon, Benedict, right? This is a great sheet, right? Because look, I love how she broke this down. She's literally starting to art direct here, through the character design, like labeling, hey, he's got all these concaves and convexes. His head is like a flamingo. He's in a dog-like posture. The wings are just behind the shoulder blade, like all these notes, right, that she's keeping in mind to draw the characters. Last but not least, I love this this Tom and Jerry sheet of Jerry here. Just beautiful, right? Look at the pushed expressions, still staying on model and all the acting that's going on here. And it's got so much zip and force in it, just beautifully, man, beautifully drawn and great control of line, you know? Swanley, cool drawings of colors. Where are the questions, class? Oh, yeah. What's the first thing that you do when beginning a character design in terms of drawing? So from Tom, it's a great question. Personally, I think the first step, and Swanley, obviously feel free to jump in, but I think, as I said before, it's very easy to just sit there and start drawing, right? And I don't know if there's like a right answer to the first step, but I would do a lot of research too, just like we do on anything else. I would start to try to cast. I would write a lot of notes about, just written notes about who is this character? What do they like to eat and drink? You know, where were they born? What would they do in this particular circumstance? Like if you put them in tough sort of moral situations, what would they do? Or even simple ones, as they sit down, you know, are they going to eat, are they going to eat Special K or Captain Crunch, right? Like who are they, right? And trying to get a sense of that. And then I think I would probably sketch and I would do reference and sketch and reference. And Swanley and I had done this, by the way, through one of the products on drawingforce.com is Swanley going through designing Medusa, right? So we picked a sort of classic villain or villainess. And we went through that saying, what is Medusa's function, right? Like, who is she? What's her job? How did she get here? Why is she this Gorgon in the first place, right? Like, what's going on with her? And what are her powers, right? The idea that she can turn people to stone through her gaze. That led us to brainstorming ideas of Medusas that you've never seen before, you know, because we came in through this functional aspect. So, you know, think about that. Sometimes it's really easy. You know, we haven't gotten to this yet, but sometimes it might be the person's job. You know, the Olympics just went past, and hopefully you guys noticed, based on the sport, the athletes look different. Gymnasts look different than swimmers or divers, right? Divers are usually, or swimmers are longer and thinner and more long muscled and more streamlined. And gymnasts are usually very short, right? Low center of gravity, more round, bulbous, bodybuilder-esque, you know, bodies, right? Especially the males, right? They're like huge shoulders and stuff for all of the, like the rings and for the bars, the uneven bars, right? So very different. And then you got the weightlifting guys are different than the basketball guys, or different than the hockey guys, right? Then different than the rowers. I was watching the canoeing one day, the rowing, man, and everybody, male, female, huge upper bodies, right? Because you think about their lats and their traps, their deltoids, all the muscles on the scapula, like just ripped, right? Ripped and huge because they're, and you know, and their core is huge, right? Because they're constantly like, you know, rotating their body to row. So if I had to say to you, hey, I want you to design a rower, right? You got to think anatomically, their body is manipulated by the function of their career, right? And then what kind of rower is it? Is that rower, you know, to me, when I think of rowers, watching them, to me, they were very much like machines. Like, I think these are very disciplined people, you know, people who know how to do a thing over and over and over again and practice the perfection of that. I don't see like a surfer dude as a rower, for instance. Very different. Surfing is sloppier and more organic and flowy. And these rowers, man, they were machines. They might as well be robots in there, right? Like, I was just shocked at the perfection and the timing, especially two people in one boat. So what does that mean? How does that work, right? Is there going to be a new character? Yes, there is, Ricardo. Hopefully by the end of next year, Swanley and I are working on a book that will lead to a course. So yes, the process of choosing colors should go with the character personality, or one can have more freedom in choosing color. Color does matter as well. I usually save it towards the end, but yes, color's huge. When I was at Disney Animation and they were talking to us about character design, I'll never forget this. There's the fox that is in Pinocchio, and he's wearing a black cape from what I remember. And inside the black cape is red. And they were like, that was no accident. That's a conscious decision, right? Black's already typically bad, but on top of that, he's hiding red, right? That shows even more how evil the guy is, right? So yes, color, man, to me is like the icing on the cake to really, really punch up a character's purpose, right? A character's purpose. Can we design a character now, perhaps a famous character's attitude or function? I don't know. I'll see if we have time today. We have a lot of people to get through, meaning artist-wise. Maybe in future, I could definitely see us doing future streams, and maybe we design a character together. I think that'd be a great idea. Character sheets really bring characters to life. Yeah, character sheets are great, man. Great. When I was teaching character design at the Academy in San Francisco, I was teaching this master's class there, and the final assignment, the final for that class, was to put a character Bible or design guide together for a character. And all the students had to have the ability to show me how to draw their character, right? So they had to go through that whole process, which was pretty amazing. When I draw cartoon characters like Samurai Jack or Danny Phantom, how to draw a function on these characters, they are different from humans, simple, forceful shapes. But sometimes I see the leg template doesn't follow directly, but the leg is forceful shape. There's beautiful rhythm on the whole figure. So then I draw the function of this type of character. Always remember. Yes, they're very shapy. Some of the ones that you just mentioned, both of those were done by, oh my God, I just blanked. Help me, Swinley. Steven Silver, right? He did Danny Phantom and Kim Possible, actually. And there are at times, to your point, Steven, who's a very, an excellent character designer, will sometimes use force in the design. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. But when he does, you can really feel the fluidity. I would say Kim Possible is actually a great example of that. Okay, let's keep going. So that's what I've got here. Oh, by the way, I wrote here link because I didn't want to forget this. In the description of today's video, I put in a link. It's called like characterlink.blogspot.com or something like that. Go check out that link. That link will take you to a website that has numerous interviews with all these different character designers and what their process is and samples of their artwork. There's no way I can capture all the amazing art that's in this video. So I put that link in there and you'll get another like 100 different character designers. Okay, so check that out after today's video.
I think one thing that is worth noticing is how much work goes into good character design. So be aware that it's not like a 5-minute job and you have a great character. Some of these characters took months, to arrive at, and a lot of drawing, which we teach at drawingforce.com is iteration, just putting in the work, and that's also why you shouldn't do it for $5. It's much more valuable than that.
Yeah, character design is a funny thing, to Swinley's point of that it looks easy. It looks like it's the simplest job in the world. And yet I can promise you, it's one of the jobs that is most critiqued in production because it's the characters of the game, the characters of the show, the characters of the film, right? It's like the most important thing is, are these characters reading, or do they have the ability to do the job they have to do to get the story across through their personalities, right? So it's the most scrutinized job there is in entertainment. And yet you see like drawings of characters and you're like, oh, big deal. It's, it's just another character's face. But I can promise you, super scrutinized. When you're at somewhere like Disney Animation, it's like getting the angle on the cheekbone right can go through iterations of just making sure the angles are right to present the character. You can go like 10 degrees lower on the jaw and it's like, his jaw feels too masculine, it's too muscular. Let's angle it up, angle it down. The nose needs to be a little shorter, a little wider, right? All those things make a massive difference. For any of you who tried to draw characters, from other character designers, you'll know it has to be dead on, right? Or it's just not that person anymore. Right. And you want to get to know that character well enough to be able to nail how they are built, how they're designed and drawn. Right. Okay. So with that, I've kind of been leading into this a little bit, and that is shape. Right. So this is Sean Galloway. I met Sean years ago at Comic-Con when I just started going, and I don't even think that's where I first originally met him or knew of him. I think so actually the first time I ever heard of Sean is I was at my school. I was opening up my school. I had Mike Mignola doing a talk. And Mignola brought up for the first time at the school, this was so exciting. He first announced that there was a Hellboy cartoon coming out, and they had this new hot character designer named Cheeks, right? And I was like, who's that? Like, I never heard of this guy. And then not too far after that, Sean started self-publishing these white hardcover books of his work with all these different lineups in them. And then after that, I actually met Sean at Comic-Con and became friends with him through that. And then years later, I worked at Leapfrog, and we needed a character designer for this huge IP that we were developing there. And I was able to hire Sean as the art director. I hired Sean to do the character design for that. So I got to work with him well for almost about a year. And it was all awesome. I love Sean. I love Sean's work. I feel like if I were to design nowadays and push into character, I would probably be in this space. Like, I think Sean and I actually have a very similar aesthetic. And I love Sean's work. I think he's amazing at what he does, and he's come really far. Now, when I watch him draw, there's like no building, no nothing. He's just like drawing shapes with form and dynamic poses, and it's all like happening in his head. His machine is working, and it's like, boom, it just happens. But look at these designs, right? Like, great shape. Look at the different character in each face. Look at the different silhouettes, the costuming, like cocky, relaxed, singing, more chill, right? A little more in your face as well, right? But different personality types. The books that he was putting out, they looked like this, right? So they were like page after page of amazing silhouettes, right? Like, I love the silhouette shaping of these characters, and then how he fills them with all these amazing shapes. Always forceful, always fluid, always solid, right? He's great at skirting between 2D and 3D space, right? He's just excellent at it. So damn good, so good. Yeah, like this was from one of his original books, and I loved this stuff. I was like, man, I love that Batman. Man, I love that Superman, right? I love this Nightwing. Like, it was just all good, Again, great shapes, great fluidity, great design. Yeah, and thank goodness he's still around. He's doing this same thing, and you can find, he's on Instagram. He's got a great account. He puts in tons of work up there. I can't remember where Cheeks comes from. I think it has something to do literally with his cheeks on his face, from what I remember. But you'd have to ask him. It's been a long time since he told me this story. I don't know if this was like a grandma pinching his cheeks or something. I don't remember. I'm making that up, but it could have been something like that, Anyway, check out Sean. I think he's one of the best out there, I got to say. I really, really love his work. This guy, Andrew, I found when I was working on the animal drawing book. He does animals. So he's worked in the industry as well, does a lot of character work, more animal based, but I just think he's excellent. I really appreciate when I can see that somebody draws well, and they're combining that with shape. So the mass of things is 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional at the same time. It's almost this play of 2D to 3D. And it's interesting, right? Because if you can get to a place of shape is more malleable than form is. It's simpler, so you can affect it more strongly than you can form. Form's tougher. I think it's harder to manipulate because it takes more information to sculpt it than it does to play with shape. Shape's much simpler, and then the trick is, do you have the ability to push it in form? Can you actually draw within it? So, like, I love this line. I think the shapes are awesome. I love the mane. I love the shape of the face, the nose, the mouth, the ears. It's all great, right? There's Panther, right? It's just really fun. A huge, thick upper neck and shoulders, right? The shape of the mouth, shape of the legs. Yeah, again, just love it. I love his stuff. So check out Andrew Sheck. Here's a page right out of his sketchbook. His dog and his ram. Just really fun. You can tell the guy knows how to draw. If you check out his work, you'll see he's an amazing draftsman as well, which is what leads to this kind of design and this ability, right? See how I'm doing on time. I got to get ready and to hand this off to Swenley. So this is Brittany Lee. Brittany Lee is a Disney development or visual development artist. My first stint with Brittany Lee, I remember I was working at Leapfrog at the time, and she was putting out these illustrations. And somewhere in the midst of all this, she got hired by Disney. Next thing you know, she's putting out beautiful work like this for Frozen, right? Just excellent. And then I started seeing her put this out. She started making almost like shadow boxes in a sense. She would do these cutout paper shadow boxes of Disney movies. And I was like, oh my God, I have to buy one of these. I still haven't to this day, but she did one for Lion King. I was like, oh man, I just been too busy. I have to reach out to her and commission her to do one of these because they're just spectacular. What I like about this is not only is it forceful shapes and it's fluid, it's almost like the old multi-plane 2D animation work, right? Because it's cut levels of paper. So you're getting all this depth out of two-dimensional planes, but there's three-dimensionality in the shapes, right? Look at his face, right? Look at his face. It's dimensional, but the piece of paper is a flat piece of yellow paper that's been cut out, but there's space inside the flat cutout. Such a great way to think about designing. It's like you have a flat piece of paper that you're cutting out for that silhouette, but you're putting form inside of it, right? And I mean, just so well done, right? The skill level here is superb, right? It's just excellent. I've met Brittany a couple of times as well at, I think CTN or Comic, I think it's CTN. Very friendly, she's great to talk to me, she's almost like the modern day Mary Blair, you know, and I know she loves Mary Blair and you see some of her work kind of is reminiscent of that. And man, she's, you know, she's doing it. I mean, she does great work. And, you know, I think she's made huge contributions to Disney animation. The latest thing I remember she was, there was a lot of news around was on Candy Crush and Wreck-It Ralph, the Candy Land. She took the time to build the Candy Land out of candy, right? They actually made like a set out of all of the candy and used that as reference for the film, not only the cinematography, but the materials, right, for 3D and the rendering of all of it. Yeah, so look, check that out if you can find that. It's pretty damn spectacular to see. But anyway, great, great designer, great color, right? Great shapes, great fluidity. There's a little Harry Potter action, right? Really fun, fluid shapes, different facial expressions, and damn, I love this whole paper cutout thing. I gotta say, I just love it. It makes me think about 2D and 3D space and how those two things work together, and I just really love it. Okay, last but not least, sort of an older favorite of mine. When I think of Shane Glines, I think of my years teaching at SVA. Shane was huge, like in the mid 90s to late 90s when I was teaching there. Like every student I had knew who Shane Glines was. And if they didn't, then I made sure they knew who he was. There was like Shane, you know, Glenn Keane, I used to talk about a lot and still do. But Shane was really in that sort of like, he was like bringing back the retro feel into the 90s from more of like the 50s, 60s cartoons with like Tom Orub, who was a big character designer. It's like Fred Flintstones in that time period. And he was bringing that back, that aesthetic, right, as you can see here. All right. Again, great, you know, force, form, shape, personality, acting, silhouette, right? All of that stuff going on. He could play curves against straights. He was very graphic, you know, meaning graphic designing, you know, straight to curve shapes, very clear designs. I think there's something to that. To me, in the term design, I think graphic design is the first thing I put in front of design is graphic design. And then in graphic design, you know, is like character design, industrial design. One of my favorite comic book artists, a guy named Howard Chaykin, has some videos online that one of my students just told me about yesterday. And he was saying how comic books are like, it's graphic design used for the purpose of storytelling. And I was like, boom, that is it. That's exactly how I try to teach it. You know, you want to learn the graphics of composition to tell story. And composition is like graphic design, basically. You're trying to figure out how to get shapes to tell story. And here we're talking about how do we get shapes to tell story through, to create people, right? Shapes that have forms, shapes that are oriented in ways that present human emotion and human expression and mannerism, right? All that stuff. Let's see, and this is the last one. So we're having to look at a Sean Galloway Batman. Here's a Shane Glines Batman and Batgirl, right? So like I said, this is all the stuff that he went through. So I wanted to close really quick here. I'm going to actually do some sketching for you before Swinley comes on. I'll take about 2 minutes here just to show you one of my pet peeves and try to solve it. So I've always thought if I ever got back to drawing comics, to me, Wolverine should look something like this. And I'm a big Wolverine fan, so I'm there with you. You can argue with me all you want if you don't like this design. It's all good. I won't take it personally. I'm going to be very fast here, but I just want to make my point about something, okay? Which is Wolverine to me is a short, stubby block of a guy, right? He would look something like this with like barely any neck, right? Huge, like blocked out torso, wide, flat rib cage, right? He'd be like this. I can get my force stuff now in here. I got the proportions in there. I can get all the anatomy and stuff in there, you see? So that's Wolverine to me, right? Short and stubby, a block of a guy, right? Dangerous, right? Like you don't want to like have him thrown at you and then attack you, right? And if I were to put him next to Spider-Man, Spider-Man would be something like this. Right. My point to this is I would design the superhero characters really based on their function, right? Like Spider-Man, I think would have ripped thin arms. I think he'd have pretty big forearms because of the work that he does with his forearms. I think I would make him kind of muscular in here. Right. Long fingers. I picture him thin and long, spider-like, right? And he's a teenager. Well, sometimes he's a teenager. Thin, maybe huge calves. I would give him probably huge calves. Why? Because of his jumping ability and probably pretty good quads, but long and ripped. So my point is to design based on purpose, right? And here it's the anatomy itself that can even show that off, you see? So I want you to be aware when you're designing characters, think about what their job is. What do they do from day to day? Right? Right, big eyes, right? I would have Spider-Man have be something like this. So I'm going to close with that before I hand it over to Swinley here. I want you to be aware to think about shape, design, form, all those things to work towards who the character is, right? So Tom said, is Hugh Jackman not the correct casting? Yeah, the problem with my view of Spider-Man and Wolverine is in live action, it's a lot harder to push, right? To really push. And the acceptability of the insanity of the design they just created is harder to buy into, right? Today's superhero movies are darker, the costuming's more real. Look at Superman. Look at Superman from the 70s that was like bright colors. Now everyone's like muted down to make it more mature. So they push for reality. I don't know if it would fly in a film, but I would probably try to make him on the shorter, stouter side than Hugh. And I love Hugh Jackman. I think he's a freaking damn talented actor. But is he right for Wolverine now? For me, probably not. I would say he's too perfect. He's like too perfect male, too tall, like I would want a shorter, stockier, hairier guy in there, and I would get taller, thinner Spider-Man, push those ideas, like make the characters fun and more unique. I don't think it would fly in today's film. Like I said, it's too real, and I'm pushing more caricature, All right, I'm going to hand it off to Swinley. I'm going to get out of the way here. You all ready, Swinley?
Yes.
I have to hand you control. Let's see here. Make co-host. There you go.
All right.
Danny DeVito, yes. Danny DeVito for Wolverine. That would have been awesome. Yes, Danny.
Oh, yeah.
And angry, like he was in Taxi. See that? Danny DeVito for Wolverine is awesome. Yeah, with a big cigar. Perfect. Nice call there. Yes, nice call. I love it.
All right. So yeah, thank you, Mike. That was awesome. Good introduction explanation. So style range, the thing that a lot of artists tend to get caught on in, what's my style. And I would say the best thing is to just learn like the whole range, like usually if you like train in figure drawing, you usually will start with realism, because the thing about like designing towards the more comic bookish and abstract is you have to understand reality before you can stylize it. So as Mike showed earlier, we created this chart, all the way from realism to more abstract designs. So what are the differences? So here I have like a more realistic drawing. This is by Alex Ross, I believe, amazing artist. And here we have something more stylized, which you would find in animation. I think this from the old Wolverine and the X-Men animated series from back in the days. And then you have a more recent one, Wolfwalkers. But notice the difference, like in the realistic one, you have like a lot more detail, and if you look at the line work, there is more like bumpiness, like in realism, you usually like capture like every bump and nuance of the figure. But once we start getting more stylized, notice that the line work becomes more simpler, like Mike calls it like they iron out the shapes. So like they get rid of all like the wrinkling and the bumps in the lines, and it becomes more streamlined and efficient. And then you push forwards more into abstraction, like someone mentioned Samurai Jack. Wolfwalkers would be in the same style range. And notice this shot, for example, like it's purely focused on shape. It's just a flat shape. Like it wouldn't work in a style like this. You wouldn't see it happen. Like this doesn't fit in this degree of realism. You really have to like abstract or simplify reality to this degree to get there. And one thing about like these more flat and like graphic design styles is also the camera angle. Like notice that this is like almost a perfect front view of the character, and notice that as soon as you put the character in perspective, you have to get form in there, otherwise they would look like a cardboard cutouts, standing in 3D space. So for these flat styles, camera angle is also important. Again, you want to be functional with your decisions. So if you want to focus on the shapes, it's much more easy to pull off if you use like flat views. Like notice this one in the corner as well. Like it's a perfect side view. Notice that the ground plane is pretty much flat. There is no perspective going on at all. And here, like there's some shaping going on, but you have to start bringing in some form information, to make the character work in perspective. Like one other example that comes to mind is South Park. If you look at South Park, there's a lot of focus on like the flat shapes. You wouldn't see like a heavy 3-point perspective, that easily. I think maybe in one episode or two, they pull it off with some 3D, but it's mostly like a front-on view and focus on shape. Sometimes they would throw like a semi 1 point in there to get some depth going on. So keep that in mind. The camera angle that you choose also has to be functional when you want to go into these more flat abstract styles. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. So let's see. Yeah, I think that was it for that. So differences, and of course the question that comes up, how does force help with all of this? Like Mike already touched upon, like force drawing has to do with function. We really like study to understand how things work. And with character design, it's primarily humans and animals, or combination thereof. So first of all, you want to study the real thing, understand how the body is built to function, to perform different actions relative to gravity. And then you apply that to your character designs. You know, I often see students like they do all these force studies, but yet when I see their personal work, it's like, you know, they throw that out of the window. It's like a whole different artist drew it, you know, and I'm like, where is all the stuff that you learn? You know, you want to approach your character designs the same way as you approach your figure drawings. You know, learn like the simple forces, think about how the body works to balance itself relative to gravity, think about the rhythms and the connectivity of the body, and then that gives you a blueprint that you can build further on. You know, so you start with the real thing, learn how humans and animals especially work, and then translate that and apply it to your character designs. So like Mike mentioned before, also force shape it gives you this kind of efficiency and appeal, you know, and again, you start practicing with real figures. You know, you look at the real figure, and once we go past force and form and getting into shape, we start getting more into like abstracting or simplifying reality and seeing like what are like this big simple shapes. You know, you start looking for shape ideas and how you can use that to create a whole human or a character, you know, and that translates again into your character designs. Let's see. So we have that for a couple of minutes left. So for my own journey, like I started here, you know, I started with the more realistic stuff. I love to paint and render stuff when I used to design more for like games and tabletop games and illustration and stuff. You know, this was back in around 2012 to 2014, perhaps, that I was doing this stuff. And but then my interest changed, you know, especially after learning Force and Mike started to teach me more about design. I noticed that I became more interested in like the simple stuff, you know, like more stylized and working more with shapes, especially like here I was mainly working with form and structure. So I went from here to here, you know, this is the kind of work that I love doing right now. And the thing I can confirm is that this looks deceptively simple, you know, like coming in with these drawing skills, I thought going to like the more abstract designs, it would be a walk in the park. But man, it's difficult, you know. Like I gained a lot more respect from artists that design in this style because it takes a lot of skill to be able to like strip down reality to its bare essence, you know, and work as simple as this. So it's not easy at all, you know, and I'm still studying it and I'm still feeling like I have a lot to learn in how to pull off this kind of designs. Any questions in the chat, Mike?
No, in general, things are going pretty well. Yeah. Just kind of going along with your conversation.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So let's look at some quick examples before we close. So this is Borja Montoro. I think I misspelled his name, but man, great skill in combining force, form, and shape. You know, he's shaping things out, but they are very well structured. You know, and his designs also have great rhythm. You know, if you look at this elephant, for example, let's move this around. Like notice the rhythm, you know, you have this to this to this, you know, notice the, like this is like one big simple shape, you know, with like a cutout, you know, so it's all very forceful. Same for, look at these shapes, you know, it's all simple, four shapes. They have a clear direction and sense of fluidity and movement to them. You know, here you have the same, you have this to this. You know, so the theory of force helps to get to these kind of designs. You know, you have to start to understand how, again, things function. You know, yeah, here you have like this reverse S curve occurring. Now this would be like more like a C curve. You have stretch and squash on that side. Now, great and great expression. Like I like his skill in combining or in using shape to define structure. You know, there's like this all clearly shaped out, but yet it's three-dimensional at the same time. No, so awesome, awesome artist. Let's get rid of this.
I think, yeah, the thing I want all of you to be aware of, and it's taken many years and I've come up with many different like one-liners for understanding, again, the relationship between shape and form. I think recognize that form is the foundation no matter what, and shape is kind of just the efficient version of form, you know? So if you want to get really good shape, you have to know how to draw form. And a lot of people think they can kind of skip past form to get to shape design, but it doesn't work like that. That means there's a whole component to drawing that you've missed. You got to get the structure in there. That creates silhouette, that creates shapes. So got to get that form stuff going.
Yeah, indeed. We see students try to rush to shape all the time because, of course, it looks beautiful, you know, and it's like seducing to work with. But again, if you look at reality, like form follows function, and the shape is the outside edge of the form, you know. So you have to start with the function, go through form, and then you arrive at the shape. You know, you cannot skip what's in between and hope to get good results. It won't work, like Mike said. Then we have TB Choi, again, awesome artist, very skilled, you know, and talk about style range. You know, notice the range from more realism to like more comic bookish to more anime, you know, and notice that the rendering changes a bit as well. You know, the rendering starts becoming a bit more simpler, and you see the light and shadow shapes start becoming more simpler as well. You know, so awesome artist. Like look at all the shaping, you know, and yet there is form and there is force and rhythm to it, holding it together. You know, like these designs don't work by accident. You know, artists that are able to like pull these off, they have understanding. You know, they understanding of how things work in reality, and
Yeah,
then they're able.
TB Choi is an artist that I've spoken to personally, and she uses force. So I know that she's read the books. You know, she's brought some of these force concepts online to try to share with, you know, with other artists, and she's definitely using force in her work. You know, which is really cool. I mean, I'm very grateful that she is.
Yeah, indeed, she's amazing. Then we have Shiun Kim, of course, again, awesome designer. Like I love his line work, you know, and how he pushes the asymmetry, like even in a front shot like that, you know, he could have gone and made this like a perfect symmetrical shape, but notice that this is essentially a fourth shape, you know, that's a clear direction to it. And this side is a bit straighter, you know, so as soon as you give direction to the shape, it feels like it's moving, you know, it's more dynamic, you know, like if you do something like this is very static, you know, doesn't feel like it's going anywhere, it's just standing there. But as soon as you apply force to one side of the shape, then you have this and it feels dynamic and moving. Now, so great designs for Into the Spider-Verse and Big Hero 6. You know, I love his Spider-Gwen designs. You know, these are just awesome, very like efficient with shape and yet good structure within those shapes as well. Okay, and last but not least, we have Nico. I think his last name is pronounced Marley, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, French. Nico Marley.
Yeah, so you probably know him from his designs for Kung Fu Panda. You know, again, great artist. But you know, if you look past the rendering and all the details, you know, he's great at force shape. Like this character right here is just one big force shape, and notice that the shape has a clear like direction to it. Same with this one, you know, notice that it's just one big straight to curve design, and then he's like adding more force shapes in there. Like look at this rhythm right here. It's awesome. So it's all basically what we teach in force drawing, working with shapes. Same with this guy, the same simple shape being used over and over again. Yeah, these B characters also awesome, great, again, expression and great shape overall, great acting. So yeah, character design is a lot of, it takes a lot of knowledge, understanding, and skill to pull off. It's not something that's, like Mike said before, it's not something that's easy and that everyone can just pull off. It takes a lot of training to do it. And one of the best ways, I can tell you from experience, is just finding a mentor, someone who does what you want to do, and let them train you. They will tell you things that you can't figure out by yourself. All right, that was it for me. I'm going to stop the share.
All right, thank you, Swenley.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Back to my Wolverine Spider-Man. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy today's talk. Man, it made me just realize, again, this is something we can do many other live sessions on. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to character design. Maybe what we'll do is a future session is even do one that's like an assignment or something, right? And we'll hand it out like during the week, and then everyone comes in with their designs, right? It might be a write-up, right? I might give you a written write-up, and then we see what everyone comes in with, and the teachers will come in with their own designs as well. So have a great weekend. Try and look through the filter of character design over this weekend. Look at the family and friends that you are around. Think about how you would cast them. What kind of roles would they play? Look at the TV shows and movies that you watch. Why are those actors cast in those roles? What do they instill, right? What do they make you feel? And why do you feel the way you do by looking at them, right? What is the morals and themes that they represent? And how is their clothing? We didn't even get into clothes, but how's their costuming, their clothing, their persona, their mannerisms? How is all of that portray and help drive the story, right? Everything, I have to say, one thing I've learned in life, everything is much deeper than you think it is. Character design looks like it's an easy job. There's a lot behind it to be a successful character designer. And you have to really be sensitive to the human experience and to those around you and what they look like and what they portray and what they make you feel, right? You got to be hyper vigilant about all that. So have a great weekend. I hope you guys enjoyed today's stream on character design. We will see all of you next Friday with some other interesting topic. And yeah, take care. Go design characters. Bye-bye. See you, Swenley.
Bye, guys. See you. Bye-bye.